Originally written May 10th, 2014. Tomorrow marks a weird and painful anniversary for me. It's 2008, and I've just arrived in Kuwait. I had the luck of having to arrive back from leave on my birthday. It's also Mother's Day, just like this year. Despite all that, I'm a little upbeat. Yes, I'm back in the shit, but I'm also on my way out. The second deployment was going by a little easier than the first, and I was 10 months away from being out of the Army completely. When you go on leave, you depart in small groups, which get smaller the closer you get to your own destination, and which recombine the further you get from it on your return journey. My group was all together again in the staging area outside the travel office, waiting to be redirected back to Baghdad. There's a saying in the Army, "Hurry up and wait," which roughly means there's immediacy to everything, but sit tight, it's gonna be a while. We were in one of those hurried waits. To kill time, I go to the internet cafe to sip on internet. I check my email, and what I read sends me into a frenetic panic. I can barely read what's in front of me. I have to reread it several times, out of just disbelief or the fear that I'm actually not understanding what I'm reading. Someone I knew had died today. Someone I cared about a great deal. During my previous deployment, I had dated one of the medics. I won't go into all the ins and outs of what an Iraqi war zone dating scene is like. At first I thought I found someone as odd and eccentric as I was to share some time with. That turned out not to be the case. What I will say is that the situation I found myself in was not unlike what happens to Jason Bateman and Charlize Theron in their roles on Arrested Development. I had mistaken someone for being fun and eccentric for someone who wasn't quite all there. Despite being an incredibly fun and amusing personality, it became clear to me that she wasn't all that bright. She was constantly being reprimanded for failing at her job and other tasks. This is someone that the Army said, "Okay, you can come in too." The system had failed, in my opinion. She was an incredibly sweet and kind person, but not someone that the Army should have allowed to participate. I can elaborate more on this outside this wall of text, I suppose. I ended things once we got stateside. While we were deployed, it kind of served both our interests to be together. She wasn't getting harassed by the other soldiers, and I wasn't being labeled some kind of queer or something. While back in Kentucky, I advanced in rank and office. She just stagnated in her position, continually balancing poor performance with cheery likability. We didn't talk much during that year. Halfway through the time before redeployment, we took a trip to a training exercise in Louisiana. The bus was big enough that we didn't have to sit next to people. During the night, she came up and sat next to me and asked if she could talk to me. I asked her how she had been doing lately. She remained very calm and said I was raped, then burst into tears and started sobbing uncontrollably on my shoulder. A secret I've kept for far too long. She wouldn't report it. I know it made her more unstable moving forward. She started mixing booze and pills she took from her position pretty regularly. A lot of us were doing a lot of self-medicating those days, though. Here was some of the worst. She was already extremely reclusive, but after that, I barely saw her outside of work. Despite the increased instability, the Army was still all right with sending this poor little girl to a war zone. We were in different camps most of the time. I checked up on her as much as I could. I don't think there's a delicate way for me to put any of this or how I felt about this. She wasn't that bright. I felt stupid for not seeing that right away. Should it have mattered? I got to know her better than the other troops. How could the Army let her serve? Who was I to judge her? I felt angered by the fact that she had her innocence ravaged by some opportunistic asshole. I felt bad I couldn't protect her. I just felt awful about everything. I told her I'd see her when I get back. I didn't even make it back in time to see her body leave. There are many things that constantly fester in my mind about that senseless war. Things I'll never forget. Things that fill me with rage and sadness. Nothing eats away at me quite like the loss of her. A poor, sweet, innocent girl was the only mortal casualty that our deployment encountered during our second deployment. She was given all the proper rites and the rituals that you bestow upon a fallen warrior. Everyone remembered that positive about her, and I don't blame them for that. I wish they could have seen it as the appropriate amount of needless as it was. She should not have been there. We mourned our loss and moved on as we always did. 10 months till freedom, but not really. You're never really completely free of it all. I can't imagine the loss that her mother must have felt that day. Her baby girl taken away on Mother's Day, of all days. It must be an incredible and devastating loss for someone to lose a child no matter what day it is. To be reminded of it on a day that's supposed to acknowledge the accomplishments of motherhood must be in its own way uniquely upsetting. Let your moms know that you care. Let other moms know too, and don't stop at moms. Let everyone who you care about know